Hi friends, Michael here from Business for Unicorns, and today I'm going to talk about a really important and sometimes kind of sticky topic. The topic is how to set boundaries with your clients or customers. And you'll see throughout the course of this video, I'll use those words interchangeably. And I decided not to write about this because I thought video would be a better way to kind of have a conversation about this topic. And so here's the thing, is that in any kind of high-touch, kind of customer-centric business, it is so important to build intimate relationships with your clients. Certainly that's been the backbone of Mark Fisher Fitness and Business for Unicorns. And when you have strong relationships, personal relationships and connections with your clients, there's a lot that's really awesome about that. It means you're able to kind of better understand your clients and ultimately better to serve them better because you have that personal connection. It also allows you to kind of develop a really great mutual trust. And from that trust often comes loyalty, which means clients that stay longer. So there's a lot that's really important when you're in the service business. It's really important to build those intimate and sometimes personal connections with your clients. There's also big challenges to building personal and intimate connections with your clients. And we face these all the time at Mark Fisher Fitness and now Business for Unicorns. And that's really what I want to talk about today is the challenges and how you can start to set better boundaries to overcome those challenges. So the challenge is, it's hard because you want your relationships with your clients to be both professional and personal. And I mean personal in the way that you are vulnerable to them, they are vulnerable to you, there's some personal caring and empathy, but you ultimately want to find a balance between those two. You want it to be a very professional relationship that gets results and serves in the best way possible, and you want it to be personal, that you want to both share a version of yourself with each other. And so that's tough because often if there aren't clear boundaries, expectations are so easily missed. If you see me looking down sometimes, I wrote some notes because I have lots of thoughts on this. And so often what I've seen happen over time with myself and customers, and certainly with folks that I work with, is that one or both parties over time will often grow resentful when the relationship isn't balanced. And both parties aren't really feeling like they're communicating well and their needs aren't being respected. And that's a really tough thing to do, to both have a professional face and kind of a personal sentiment or feeling in your relationship. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today. And there's so many examples I could give about this over time. But certainly in the fitness space, you might hear things like this happen where you tell your clients to text you if they have any questions about their nutrition. And then suddenly that texting turns into like, oh, they're texting many times a day. They're texting late at night or first thing in the morning. That's the perfect example of something that you made personal that is now becoming kind of a liability for you because you just can't keep up. It's not sustainable. And over time, it's very easy for trainers to build a resentment to clients who they consider to be kind of over needy or pushing those boundaries too far. So that's the kind of stuff I really want to help you guys overcome. And I have really kind of like three very simple kind of steps that I want to invite you to kind of consider and try on. The first step when it comes to setting clear boundaries with your clients is, and this happens before you even talk to your clients about this, is you have to get clear with yourself about what your personal boundaries are. And so that might look like making a list, right? Sitting down with you, maybe other people on your team, or maybe doing this as a whole kind of team-wide exercise if you work with other people, and getting clear about what you personally think your boundaries are. And get specific. Make a list of all the things you're willing to do and all the things you're not willing to do. And when you're making this list, think about all the aspects of your relationship with your clients. So think about things like, what services are you willing to offer and not offer? How do you plan to communicate with each other? Things like texting and phone calls and Facebook messages. I mean, we're so available now that that's often a place where I see the most conflict is in decisions about how we communicate with our clients. Also, you want to think through when you're making this list, how will you get paid? I know oftentimes small business owners, when you're first starting out, will make exceptions for certain clients that they feel like are friends and they have personal connections with, and they'll say, oh, I'll give this person a special rate because we're friends, or I'll let this person pay me whatever they want. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with that, but over time, it's very easy for those kind of muddy personal relationships to interfere with serving the client and building your business. So you're making this list, things to consider, what services you're going to offer or not offer, how will you communicate, how will you not communicate with your clients, how will you get paid, and what are some boundaries around that. And most importantly, when you're making this list, what are your thoughts about how you want to handle conflict when it arises? So when you do have some missed expectations and one or the other parties is like kind of upset, pissed, and expectations are not met, how do you expect to handle conflict? That's a really important part of boundary setting. And so that's really step one, is you getting clear with yourself personally. And if you're on a team, cool. Do this as a team exercise and get clear as a team about what your boundaries are. But that's step number one, get clear with yourself. Step number two is really to set expectations early. You want to define expectations and boundaries at the beginning of each new relationship when you can. And so if you work, I'll use fitness as an example because I know that's most of you watching. That's why things like member handbooks or client handbooks are really important, because that's a way to set boundaries from the very beginning. And in there you can outline all the things I just mentioned, how you expect your clients to communicate with you and not communicate with you, how you expect to get paid, how you expect them to show up in your space and behave if they're coming to a physical location. How do you expect them to show up? Do you want them to check in at a certain time? How do you handle latenesses, wait lists? This is all kind of part of boundary setting. And when you can start with a really solid foundation early in your relationship, that's fantastic, because it just continues to grow and grow and grow from there. And the other thing I'll say about setting expectations early is, and this is probably true for earlier in your business, but I'll give some examples along the way. So what I want to say is be ready to negotiate, right? In many cases, you'll come to the table with, here are my boundaries. Here's what I want and don't want. Here's what I'll do and I won't do. And oftentimes you'll come up with the clients that you want to work with who ask for something special, who need something unique, who don't fit in the boundaries that you thought you had for yourself. And in some cases, I think there's some real room for negotiation there. Certainly over the course of MFF's history, we've certainly, kind of parted ways with some ninjas who we just couldn't find, weren't really a match when it comes to what we wanted from each other, and that's totally fine. But other cases, we've made exceptions to people who've been loyal to us for a long time, who've spent a lot of money or been with us for many years. And I think making exceptions is okay too. But you want to do it thoughtfully. If you're going to negotiate in your relationships with your clients and have different boundaries for different people, just be cautious. You don't want it to get out of control, where every client is living by a different set of rules and expectations. And so just keep those exceptions to a minimum if you even want to allow them at all. So that's step number two, is set expectations early. If you can do it in writing in the form of handbooks or even signed contracts or agreements with your clients, that's fantastic. I do this with my Business for Unicorns clients, the people that I work with, coaching them on their business. And it often sounds like this. We'll get on the phone or we'll get on Skype and I'll say, cool, the first thing I like to do when I'm working with new clients is set some clear expectations of one another. It won't take long, but I found that having some ground rules helps us be most effective in our work together. Is it okay if we talk about some ground rules? That's it. That's how I start with almost every new client. And some of you are watching this, you'll know because I've done it with you. And it's just a way from the very beginning to get clear on some base expectations we have of each other. And I know, because I said them out loud, that they're at least out there in the ether. That if we have issues later, I can refer back to those ground rules and those boundaries and say, hey, remember in call number 1 when I said I had a few guidelines for how we should work together? Let's revisit those for a second. And it's a very easy thing to go back to once you've laid that foundation. And then step number 3, in terms of setting boundaries with your clients, is when a line is crossed, right? When there is a missed expectation and a boundary has been breached, for lack of a better word, address it immediately. Really, this is good advice for really any conflict, but especially working with clients that you have personal relationships with. When there is a missed expectation and boundaries have been breached, talk about it right away. And you've heard Mark and I talk about the book Crucial Conversations 1,000,001 times, but this is the perfect time to break out those skills. And oftentimes it'll sound something like this. I'll say something like, hey Mark, is it okay if we talk for a minute about our work together and how it's going so far? Right? I start with a question, I get their consent. It's like, yeah, cool, let's talk about it, right? And immediately I have some buy-in to the conversation and they're willing to talk about, hey, let's talk about how our work is going so far. And I'd say something like, lately I've been feeling like we're not on the page about, I'll start over. I'll say, lately I've been feeling like we're not on the same page about X, Y, and Z. So Dave, okay if we talk a little more about that? right? And it's just a way of getting into the conversation and saying, hey, we're not on the same page. I have some boundaries that maybe I've not been clear about, or it seems like you have some boundaries that I've been pushing against. Can we talk about that? And addressing it right away is always the best bet. Again, that's true for this topic of setting boundaries with clients, but really any conflict, I really encourage kind of a lean-in approach and kind of run toward it instead of pushing it away. So those are just a few quick thoughts. This video is probably already entirely too long, but I have so many things to say about this topic. So just to reiterate, 3 things you can do to help set better boundaries with your clients. One is get clear about your boundaries first. Personally, what matters to you? What are you willing to do, not willing to do? Where are your boundaries? Start there. Number 2 is when you're developing relationships with clients, start early talking about those boundaries and expectations. Whether you're in a huge business with thousands and hundreds and thousands of clients, or you just work with a few, it doesn't matter. It's still true that you want to start early in kind of an onboarding process of setting clear expectations for one another. And then third is when issues arise and those expectations that you hopefully set from the beginning have not been met, address them early. Address them early and often. Address them with curiosity. Address them with empathy. And I think you'll learn that just doing those 3 things will help you develop long-term relationships with clients that are built on mutual trust and understanding, and that really goes a long way these days. So if you have any questions, throw them in the comments below. Find me on Facebook at Business for Unicorns, or shoot me an email, just Michael, I'm still using @markfisherfitness.com, and let's just talk about it. I love this topic. I know it can be tricky and sticky, and so that's why we're talking about it. But thanks for listening, and see you guys soon. Bye.